In this activity, we're going to be creating a program that works with strings and string slices. Once you're ready, open up Visual Studio Code and we'll get started. Once Visual Studio Code loads, navigate to your activities directory. We are on activity 14, so double-click on A14. Once the activity file loads, review the topic and program requirements. Attempt to implement a solution on your own with the video paused. Once completed, resume the video and I will demonstrate my implementation as well as provide insights to the activity topic. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. As we can see, our topic is about strings. Our requirements are to print out the name and favorite colors of people aged 10 and under. Our notes indicate that we need to use a struct to store the person's age, name, and favorite color. The color and name should be stored as a string. We need to create at least 3 people. We need to iterate through the people using a for-in loop. We need to use an if expression to determine which person's info should be printed, so people age 10 and under. The name and colors should also be printed just using a function. To get started, I'm going to copy the notes down here a little. Our first note indicates we need to use a struct for a person's age, name, and favorite color. So I'm going to use the struct keyword. I'll name the structure person. They're going to have a name, which has to be an owned string. They're going to have a favorite color. That's also going to be a string. And their age. And I'll use a 32-bit integer. Next, we need to create and store at least 3 people in a vector. That can be done in the main function. I will create a vector named people. I'll use the vec macro to do so. Within the vec macro, we can create the people that we need. So I'm going to create my first person. I'm going to use the from implementation on the string structure and create a person called George. Their favorite color is going to be green, and their age will be 7. I can then copy this and create another person. So this person can be Anna. Her favorite color can be purple, and she is 9 years old. And lastly, we should have somebody who's over the age of 10. That way they don't show up when we run our loop. This person can be named Katie. Her favorite color is blue, and she is 14 years old. Next, we need to iterate through the vector using a for-in loop. So we use the for keyword, create a variable name. I'll use the name person. We use the keyword in, and then people. So this is read as, for each person in a collection of people, do something here. That something is to use an if expression to determine which person's info should be printed. I'm going to split the view so we can see all the code. So we need to check if a person's age is at least 10 years old or younger. So here in the person struct, we have an age field that we can check. If we type if person.age to access that field, less than or equal to 10, then here we're going to print out their name and their favorite color. To do so, we need to use a function. So I'll write a function here. I'm just going to call it print. It's going to accept just any data, and that data will be a string slice. Nothing needs to be returned since it's just printing out information. I'll use the print line macro with the debug token to print out the data. We can then utilize this function here by calling the print function with a person.name and a person.faveColor. Notice here in our person struct, we have owned strings for the name and favorite color. Our print function, however, takes a string slice, which is borrowed, as we can see since there is an ampersand symbol. So in order to properly call this function, we need to borrow their favorite color and borrow the name. So now that we've borrowed the strings, they will get turned into string slices and our print function will work properly. This should satisfy all the requirements of the program. So I'm going to walk through it and then we'll run it and see if it executes as expected. So first we have a variable called people, which is a collection. Specifically, it's a vector being created by the vec macro. It contains 3 people as defined by the person struct. Each person has a name, a favorite color, and an age. I'm using the from implementation on string to transform a string slice into an owned string. This is being done 3 times for each person. After that's completed, we iterate through each person using the for in loop. For each person in the people collection, we perform the action in this block. We then check if that person's age happens to be less than or equal to 10, then we're going to print out their name and their favorite color. The print function is defined over here, and it accepts a string slice, which is borrowed data, as seen by the ampersand. Our structure has owned data, so we have to borrow each field in order to properly use the function. So we can borrow individual fields. We're borrowing name and favorite color. Those are both going over here to the print function and where they will be printed. Once those are printed, and we iterate through every single person listed here, so this loop will be called 3 times. Once that's done, we'll exit the program. Let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. To run this program, I'm going to go to terminal, new terminal. I'll type in cargo run -q -bin. We are on activity 14. So type in A14. I'm going to scroll a bit so we can see our data here. Looking at our data, it looks like George and green should be printed, and then Anna and purple should be printed. Katie is 14 years old, so her information should not be printed. Let's run it and see what we get. As you can see, we have George and green printed, and then Anna and purple printed. This concludes the activity on strings and string slices. I'll see you in the next presentation.